Dhammacakka atra gacchantu devata saddhammang munirajas sunantu saggamokkadang Dhammasavana kalu ayang badanta Dhammasavana kalu ayang badanta Dhammasavana kalu ayang badanta Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Abhinyayang abhinyatang bhavitabang ca bhavitang Pahatabbang pahinang me tasma buddhosi brahmana. This is one of the stanzas from Majjhima Nikaya, Brahmaya Sutta. That is a very long sermon, but I have got only just one stanza from that sermon. Once Once an aged Brahman named Brahmaya heard that the ascetic Gautama, the man supposed to be a Buddha, had arrived in his town. He decided to pay him a visit. When the old Brahmin arrived, the Buddha was in the midst of a discussion with many people. Since the old Brahmin was highly distinguished, when he came into the midst of the crowd, everyone gave way to him. The Buddha too realized that this was a highly respected Brahmin, the teacher of several generations of pupils. So he asked Brahmaya to come right up to the front of the assembly and to take a seat beside him. Brahmaya then said to him, Honorable Gautama, I would like to ask you some questions. The Buddha invited him to ask what was on his mind. And the Brahmana praised his question in a 4-line verse, the basic point of which was, how can one be called a Buddha, an enlightened one? The Buddha responded to this with that stanza, the abhinyayang abhinyatam. That means what has to be known that I have known, what has to be abandoned that I have abandoned, what has to be developed that I have developed. Therefore, O Brahman, I am a Buddha. This answer tells us in brief 3 characteristics of an enlightened one. These are not only 3 characteristics of a Buddha, they are also 3 objectives of which we aim in following the teachings of the Buddha. If someone were to ask you, what is your fundamental purpose in taking refuge in the triple gem, normally what you take, and what is the purpose of observing 8 precepts, and what is your purpose of practicing meditation, then your answer should come into the same 3 points: to fully know what should be known, to abandon what should be abandoned, and to develop that should be developed. These are the goals of Buddhist path and the 3 accomplishments that mark the attainment of enlightenment. Practically, all religions offer a way of life that will lead to salvation, liberation, satisfaction, or happiness. The Buddhism is no exception. In Buddhism, the primary purpose of life is to end suffering. The Buddha thought that Humans suffer because we continually strive after things that do not give lasting happiness. We desperately try to hold on to things, friends, families, health, material things that do not last, and this causes sorrow. The Buddha did not deny that there are things in life that give joy, but pointed out that none of them last, and our attachment to them only causes more suffering. His teachings were focused entirely on this problem and its solution. This is done by recognizing the impermanence of all things and freeing oneself from attachment to these things. This will reduce suffering and eventually end the circle of rebirth. These attachments are expressed in a few words in the Four Noble Truth and Eightfold Path. As we are celebrating the Esala, that is the first sermon delivered on this day. Normally I give this sermon every year. I don't think you can remember it. So anyway, some of you remember it. Anyway, it is a good thing, but it is nice to hear it again and again to understand deeper meaning of that teaching. Although Dhammacakka Sutta, we find it is short sermon, because the end of it, because there are a lot of deities recitation, but when you look at the teaching, it is a very small bit of it. So that is what we have to learn what it is. So in that's why I give this sermon and also the Esala celebration. If we don't talk about the Dhammacakka Sutta, then it is, I think, useless. So that is why we have to talk about Dhammacakka Sutta. So Buddha in that sermon he said, Yava kivanch me bhikkhave imesu chatusu arya satyesu evam tiparivattang dvadasakarang yatabhutang jnanadasanang na suisuddhang avosi nevataham bhikkhave sadevake loke samarake sabrakmake sassamana brahmaniya pajaya sadeva manusaya anuttaran samma sambodhing abhisambuddho pachanyasi. In Pali it said, when the Buddha gave his first discourse to the 5 ascetics at Benares, he said that no long as he had not understood the Four Noble Truths in all their manifold details, he did not claim that he had attained perfect enlightenment. But when he completely understood the Four Noble Truths, then he claimed that he had attained the supreme perfect enlightenment. From this statement, we can measure the importance of this teaching for understanding the Buddha's message. Indeed, elsewhere, the Buddha said that it is because we have not understood the Four Noble Truths, we have wandered so long in this beginningless samsara, while those fully penetrate the truth are freed from samsara. While those fully penetrate the truth are freed from samsara. The Buddha's teaching is called the Dhamma, the truth, or the law. To examine the teachings carefully is especially important because as a religious founder, the Buddha functioned mainly as a teacher, not as a personal savior. And therefore, we have give first place to his teaching. He said, one who sees the Dhamma sees me, and one who would see me should see the Dhamma. In Pali it says, Yo Dhammam pasati, so mam pasati. So mam pasati, so Dhammam pasati. I'm sorry, I am having problem with these days, a little bit coughing. The Dhammacakkapavattana Sutta can be discussed under two main teachings, main headings actually. One is the doctrine, the other is the path of practice. These represent respectively the philosophical aspect and the practical aspect of the teaching. The principal formation of the doctrine is the Four Noble Truths. The principal formation of practice is the Noble Eightfold Path. The two, however, are closely linked. We can see the Noble Eightfold Path is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, while the first step to the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. So that is the Sammaditi, means understanding the Four Truths. Of the two, the doctrine naturally comes first, for the doctrine makes clear the context of the practice. You all know what are the Four Noble Truths are. The Noble Truth of Suffering, the Noble Truth of Origin of Suffering, Noble Truth of Cessation of Suffering, the Noble Truth of the Way to the Cessation of Suffering, Dukkha, Samudaya, Nirodha, Marga. This formula makes it plain enough that the Four Noble Truths are revolved around common subject, that is namely the problem of suffering. They view this subject from four different angles: the problem itself, the cause, its resolution, and the means of resolution. The Pali word dukkha is translated as suffering, but it has far deeper and wider implication than the English word suffering. Yeah, when we say suffering, it is like a negative, bad feeling of it. But the Pali word dukkha originally means pain, suffering, misery. But the Buddha took this term of common usage and made it the cornerstone of comprehensive philosophical vision. Within this context, the Buddha's teaching, dukkha does not mean simply pain and suffering, but indicates a basic unsatisfactoriness at the very root of individual existence, a note of failure that lies behind all worldly pleasures and achievement. The reason for all worldly conditions is said to be dukkha. It is because they are all impermanent and unstable, because they lack any substantial core or absolute self, and because they cannot give us lasting happiness, secure against change and loss. The word dukkha therefore indicates a fundamental lack of perfection in life. Again, the word dukkha therefore indicates a fundamental lack of perfection in life. The Four Noble Truths fit together in a tight logical pattern. The logic of the pattern is governed by the law of cause and effect. The first two truths show the law of cause and effect in relation to suffering and bondage. First, the Buddha highlights the effect, that means is suffering. Then he points to the cause of suffering, which is craving. The second two truths, that is Nirodha Satya and Marga Satya, show the law of cause and effect with respect to happiness and liberation. First, the cessation of suffering, which is Nibbana, and then the means of attainment, Nibbana, the Noble Eightfold Path. The Buddha here reversed the usual order of cause and effect, because before showing their respective causes, he first wants to alert us to the fact that our lives are pervaded by suffering, and that complete release from suffering is possible. Once we are brought to see that our lives are problematic, then we need to learn the cause in order to remove it. And once we gain confidence that release from suffering is attainable, then we need to know the path we must follow to attain release. In this respect, the structure of the Four Noble Truths runs perfectly parallel to the formula a doctor might use to treat a patient. When a patient comes to a doctor for treatment, the doctor begins making diagnosis. He determines the nature of the illness from which the patient is suffering. This corresponded to the first noble truth, in which the Buddha tells us that the affliction of human life is dukkha, and he spells out the various types of dukkha that assails us. After making a diagnosis, the doctor seeks to trace the illness to its cause. This is precisely what the Buddha does in the second noble truth, where he traces suffering to its cause and locate the cause in craving. As the third step, the doctor makes a prognosis. He decided what medication must be given to the illness. This is like the third noble truth, in which the Buddha states that suffering can be terminated by removing the craving from which it springs. And as the fourth and final step, the physician prescribes a course of treatment to cure the illness. This is exactly what the Buddha does in the fourth noble truth. He prescribed the Noble Eightfold Path as medicine for the curing the disease of suffering. That is the main idea of the Buddha. Then let us go for the noble truth of suffering. Now let us take a closer look at the four truths individually. The Buddha clarified the first noble truth not with an explanation, but with a list of different types of suffering he encountered in the course of our lives. Then in the Sutta, Buddha said, Idan kopana bhikkhave dukkhaṃ ariya sacchaṃ jātipi dukkha, jarāpi dukkha, vyādipi dukkho, maranaṃpi dukkhaṃ, apiehi sampayogo dukkho, piehi vipayogo dukkho, yampiccaṃ nolabati, tampi dukkhaṃ sankiccayen pañcupādānakkhandhā dukkha. He begins with the four kinds of suffering: birth, old age, illness, and death. Jati, jara, vyādi, marana. There is no doubt that the last three are suffering. We all are suffering with that. That means the vyādi, old age, illness, and death. And we all are fond of youth, health, and life. That is what we all are. And we feel miserable with these changes into old age, illness, and imminent death. So we can see in our own experiences, when you are getting old, how we suffer, when we are ill, how we suffer. We all have that suffering. That is the nature of it. Birth is suffering simply because it is the passageway to all other type of suffering. So that is what we want to say. Because as we are being born to this world, we all have to suffer in that way. So that is why Buddha wants to stop this suffering. So, then the Buddha mentioned three types of mental suffering. That to be united with disagreeable people and condition, to be separated from agreeable people and condition, and not to get what one wants. For all those things are suffering. So our own experience, it says, we expect many things, but we don't get. Finally, he makes a statement hard to understand. In brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. That is what we have to understand. The 5 aggregates subject to clinging, that is Panchupadana, are the basic component of our existence, the elements that make up our individual being. The 5 are physical form, our body, the feeling, perception, volitional factors, and consciousness. That's Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. They are called aggregates because each one is a collection of components, and they are described as subject to clinging because these are the things to which we usually cling with the notion that they are our personal identity or self. All our experiences can be analyzed into these 5 aggregates. There is no permanent self, any Atman, either behind them or within them. The 5 aggregates are all anatta, not mine, not I, not a self. They are temporary events, constantly changing, arising and passing away in quick succession. Physical form or the body is an order of changing physical phenomena. Tissues, cells, molecules, atoms, electrons, arising, changing and vanishing. That is what happened to our body. That is why we are getting old. So, our feelings, perceptions and volitions are merely momentary mental event. Likewise, arising and vanishing every moment. Finally, even consciousness, the basic faculty of cognition, is not a stable, lasting self, but a process of awareness, a succession of individual occasion of cognition. So you can analyze yourself how your consciousness works. So while sitting here, your consciousness goes. It comes and goes and it's changing. Because these 5 aggregates which make up our existence are impermanent and constantly perishing. The Buddha said they are all dukkha or suffering. They are incapable of giving us permanent happiness or complete satisfaction. We can never find in them the stable, lasting happiness for which we desire. We all like to have that permanent desire, but it won't be there. It is changing. When the Buddha said that all conditioned phenomena, all conditioned existence is dukkha, he does not mean that we are continually experiencing pain and misery. He openly acknowledged that life includes pleasure as well as pain, happiness as well as sorrow, success and satisfaction, and as well as failure and frustration. All are our part of our life. What he maintained, however, is that even our present experiences are temporary and unreliable. The more we cling to them in the hope of getting lasting satisfaction out of them, more we make ourselves exposed to future disappointment. If we are to free ourselves from our suffering, we must look beneath the surface of our pleasure and see not only the enjoyable surface, but the waiting dangers, the potential pitfalls being dug by our clinging and attachment. I think you have more experience than myself with that, because as a monk I don't have that so much attachment, but your attachment with you can understand that. To appreciate of the first noble truth in its full depth and range, we need to take account of the fact that the Buddha teaches rebirth. You know, when Buddha is attending, his first stage was he could realize his previous life. Then next he could realize the other's life, whatever the life they had. What are the actions they have done and what are the results they have got it with. So that is why we have to think about this rebirth. Based on his own enlightenment, he clearly declares that all living beings in whom ignorance and craving remain are subjected to wandering in samsara, the round of rebirth, as we are so much have agreed on it, attachment. So, this process of repeated existence, we call the punabbhava, has been going on throughout beginningless time, with no creation, no first point. There is no soul which transmigrate through the round of existence. No permanent self which goes from life to life, which retaining its essential identity. But without any self or soul, the stream of existence flows on from life to life as an unbroken continuum. Consciousness continues as an ever-changing current, taking rebirth in one or another mode of being as determined by the karma one has generated during one's life. So that is why we have the rebirth here and punabbhava, and also it connected with our own karma. This statement of the beginningless process of rebirth gives an additional dimension of death to the first noble truth. For it implies that the suffering we experience in any one life must be multiplied by infinity. Again and again we undergo birth, old age, illness and death. Again and again we experience sorrow, grief, pain, rejection and despair. Sometimes we may be reborn under pleasant conditions, even as a powerful Deva or God in the highest heaven, as we have comfortable life here. So it is a pleasant situation, but it is not guaranteed for the next. We may live for thousands of years with all the requisites of pleasure and power of our commands, but life everywhere eventually come to an end. Even the gods must perish and pass away. And then we move on to the new existence in which we face again the prospect of birth, aging and death, and perhaps even misery dreadful beyond endurance. To find perfect happiness and peace, we must attain release from samsara. We must break and free from our bondage to the five aggregates of clinging. To win this freedom, we must eliminate the cause of our bondage, and this means to eradicate the origin of suffering. This brings us to the second noble truth. That is the second noble truth is the truth of the origin, cause of suffering. And here the Buddha states that craving is the origin of suffering. Let us consider Buddha's own word. Buddha said, Idam kopana bhikkhave dukkha samudayam arya saccam yayan tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra tatra binandini seyatidam kam tanha bhavatanha vibhavatanha. Buddha said, what is the noble truth of the origin of suffering? It is craving, which produces repeated existence, which is bound up with delight and lust and seek a delight here and there. That is called sensual pleasure, craving for existence and craving for annihilation. The Pali word tanha literally means thirst. Therefore, craving is blind desire, selfish desire, a bottomless thirst, which is ever seeking more and more enjoyment. The Buddha enumerates 3 kinds of craving. The first is sensual craving, desire for delightful sense objects, kama tanha. The second craving for existence is the desire to go on existing, to experience more and more, which harden in the clinging to life and body, that is bhava tanha. The third craving for annihilation is the desire for non-existence, which arises when life becomes unbearable, that one seeks solace by adopting the view that at death one's personal existence comes to complete end. That is vibhava tanha. So that leads us to the fourth noble truth, third noble truth. The third noble truth, the cessation of suffering. Following the quite logically from the second truth, from its craving is the cause of suffering, then the way to eliminate suffering is to eliminate craving. Therefore, the Buddha said, Idankopana bhikkhve dukkha nirodhang arisacchang yotassāeva tanhāya asesa viraga nirodho chāgo patinsaggo mutti anālaya. The Buddha said, what is the noble truth of cessation of suffering? It is the reminderless fading away and cessation of that same craving. The abandoning and giving it up, not attachment and freedom from it. So, the cessation is suffering is Nibbana, the highest happiness and peace. This attainment can be understood at 2 levels. That's corresponding to the 2 levels in which craving is the cause of suffering. When craving is eliminated, at the mental unhappiness caused by the craving is also removed. The mind is released from this craving, the passion, and attain dispassion. And freed from all sorrow, it becomes sorrowless. Freed from all bonds, it enjoys supreme peace and security. This is the inward state of the Arahant, the worthy one. The person attained Nibbana in this very life, freed from ignorance and craving. That Arahant can never again be touched by fear, anxiety, disappointment, and worry. So that state we call the Sopatisesa Nibbana. Then there is another level of it when the Arahant passed away, that we call the Anupadisesa Nibbana. So then now we come to the fourth noble truth, that is the fourth noble truth teaches how to reach Nibbana, how to attain the end of suffering, how to release the how to realize the deathless. This is the Buddha's cause of treatment for the disease of suffering. The way is the noble eightfold path made up of 8 factors. You all know that: right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness, right concentration. The Noble Eightfold Path brings us to the second major aspect of the Buddha's teaching, the path of practice. Because suffering originates from craving, the purpose of walking the Buddhist path is to eliminate craving. This is not a forceful, ascetic rooting or suppression and self-affliction, but a wholesome, hygienic training that gradually transforms one's conduct, mental attitude, and understanding. In short, a subjective quality one's entire life into those of an Arya, a noble and whole human being. That is what Eightfold Path does. The Buddha calls the Noble Eightfold Path the middle way because it avoids the two extremes of sensual indulgence and sensual pleasures. So that is why when the sutta starts, Buddha said, Dveme bhikkhave anta pabbajitena nasevitabba katamede yo chayam kamesu kamasukaldikana yogo hino gammo potujjaniko anariyo anatta sanghito yo chayam attakilamatana yogo dukkho anariyo anatta sanghito. One extreme in the Buddha's own word was the constant attachment to sensual pleasure. The Buddha described this extreme as base, vulgar, worldly, ignoble and profitless. So kama sukhallikana yoga. The other extreme is a constant addiction to self-mortification, nattakilamatana yoga. Commenting on this extreme, which is not practiced by the ordinary man, the Buddha remarked that it is painful, ignoble and profitless. In that way, Buddha explained about those two extremes. Then Buddha said, Ete ko bhikkhave ubo ante anupagama majjima patipada tathagate napusampuddha chakku karani jnana karani upsamaya abhinyaya sambodhaya nibbānaya samati. The Buddha says that that means Tathagata, realizing the error of both those two extremes, because Buddha followed as Prince Siddhartha and as ascetic Siddhartha, he followed those two extremes. He followed those two extremes. Then that is why I select the middle path. This new path or way was discovered by himself. The Buddha termed his new system, we call the Majjhima Patipada, the middle way. To persuade his disciple to give attention to his new path, he spoke of its various blessings. Unlike the two other extremes, this middle path produces spiritual insight and intellectual wisdom to see things as they truly are. When the insight is clarified and the intellect is sharpened, everything is seen in the true perspective. The path, however, is not mere compromise between these extremes, but truly wise disciple of personal transformation with difficult mind training and deep insight into the real nature of existence. So it is not an easy path, easy practice. The Buddha called this is a good path, because it is pure and wholesome in the beginning, middle and end. It is also a happy path, because the further one advances along it, the more one experiences joy, happiness and peace. So that is what happens when you are practicing more and more. It gives you some kind of happiness. That happiness is not the ordinary way of happiness. As we understand, the aim of the path is to remove craving. Now this might seem to present a difficult problem, because craving is so deeply rooted in our minds that we cannot dump it away simply be an act of will, thinking that, oh, may it go away. It won't go. However, Buddha discovered that craving, as powerful as it may be, it conditions. It depends for its existence on conditions. It is nurtured by conditions. The primary condition on which it depends is ignorance, avidya. Ignorance is not merely lack of knowledge of certain fact, it is rather an inner blindness to things as they really are. A disposition to see things is distorted ways to perceive and interpret our experience through filters created by our deluded desires and egocentric point of view. To eliminate ignorance, what we must do is to generate knowledge of wisdom, panya, not mere conceptual knowledge, not as accumulation of itemized information, but direct insight, which penetrate beneath the appearances of things as they seem they are. So that was Buddha's teaching. The Noble Eightfold Path is the Buddha's strategy for generating this insight. In this first sermon, he described the path as Chakkukarani, Jnanakarani. That means lead into vision, lead into knowledge. The 8 factors that make up the path are not merely steps to be, followed by segments one after another. They are other elements that single integral path. Although at the outset they do uphold some sort of sequences, once the practice reaches the highest level of maturity, the right factors, 8 factors, operate simultaneously, with each factor contribution in that own unique way to the total efficacy of the path. We have limited time, so I am not going to go through all the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path, because most our Dayakas and Dayakas, everybody knows those 8 factors. But we have to have understanding the right view, Sammaditthi. Sammaditthi has 2 levels of it. 2 levels, Buddha said that the factor that because this Sammaditthi, there's one sermon called Sammaditthi itself, explain what is the Sammaditthi is. But one is to understand what we are doing, what we have to follow. That understanding is very much important. It is like traveling from London to Glasgow, because then you have to have some kind of map, otherwise you can't follow that path. Same way that we have to have some kind of understanding, right understanding of the things what we follow. That is very much we need it. Then other thing is the higher level of understanding is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. If we can't understand, if we can't realize what is suffering is, then it is very difficult to proceed. Because without understanding the suffering, then there is because we always think everything is nice, then it is not happening. So there should be understanding of what the constant change within us and also surrounding us. Then it leads us to right intention, then it goes the Nekkhamma Sankalpa, Avyapada Sankalpa, Ahimsa Sankalpa. That means some kind of mental development within us, not to have so much attachment, let go of things, and also to have the love and compassion. All those good thoughts develop, then you can develop within yourself. Then it comes to the morality factor, becomes the right speech, right actions, and right livelihood. All those things are part of the practice of this Eightfold Path. So I don't think we need to go for detail of it. Then lastly, we have the right effort should be there, and also right mindfulness and right concentration. All these things are necessary when you are practicing it to understand the suffering and overcome that suffering is. So in this way, Buddha has given his teaching on this Dhammacakkapavattana Sutta. Lastly, Buddha said in that Dhammacakkapavattana Sutta, Buddha said, Imasmincha pana veya karnosmin bhanjamani ayasmato kondanyas virajang vitamalang Dhammacakkum udapadi yankinchi samude dhammang sabbhantan nirodhamma. When this doctrine was being expounded, there arose in the Venerable Kondanya the dustless, the stainless eye of truth, and he realized whatever is subject to possession, all that is subject to cessation. When Venerable Kondanya, the first disciple, heard the Buddha's teaching for the first time, the realization he had was nothing very complicated. He simply saw that whatever things is born, that things must change and grow old as a natural condition, and eventually it must die. Kondanya had never thought of this before, or if he had, it wasn't thoroughly clear. So he had not yet let go. He still clung to the khandhas. As he sat mindfully, listened to the Buddha's discourse, Buddha nature arose on him. He received this sort of Dhamma transmission, which has a knowledge that all conditioned things are impermanent. Anything which is born must have aging and death as a natural result. So it indicated to eradicate, it gives, help us to understand why we have to eradicate craving. Then through eradication of craving, how we can get rid of this samsara. So there Buddha said, what is that this eye of Dhamma sees? What he has seen. This eye sees that whatever is born has aging and death as a natural result. Whatever is born means everything, whether material or immaterial. It all comes under this, whatever is born. It refers to all of nature. Like this body, for instance, it is born and then proceeds to extinction. When it is small, it dies from smallness to youth. After a while, it dies from youth and becomes middle age. Then it gives and to die from middle age and reach old age. Finally, reaching the end. Trees, mountains and veins all have these characteristics. So Buddha urged his disciple to practice with the mind. Because world is born in this mind. The 8 worldly dhammas are there, the eightfold path. That is investigation through calm and insight meditation. Our diligent effort and the wisdom we develop, all these things loosen the grip of the world. Attachment, aversion and delusion become lighter and being lighter. We know them as such. We experience fame, material gain, praise, happiness, or suffering. We are aware of it. We must know those things before we can understand the world, because the world is within us. So that was Buddha's teaching. So Buddha, in that sermon, Buddha explained there are three ways or 12 factors on it. Tiparivatta is the first noble truth that suffering, dukkham, suffering should be known, pariññeyam, suffering has been known, pariññātam. The second noble truth is craving, that is tanha. Craving should be abandoned, pahatabbam. Craving has been abandoned, pahina. The third noble truth is nirvana, that is nibbana. Nibbana should be realized, satchikātabbam. Nirvana has been realized, satchikatam. The fourth noble truth, the path, patipada. The path should be cultivated, bhavitabbam. The path has been cultivated, bhavitang. In this way, the Four Noble Truths has divided the 12 sections. We can find how those things are explained in Buddhist teaching, in this sermon. So that is what Buddha said, abhiññeyam abhiññātam bhavetabbam ca bhavitam pahatabbam pahinam me tasmā buddhosi prākmano. So Buddha has understood whatever he has to be understood, and he has abandoned whatever the things he has to be abandoned, and also he developed what has to be developed. So let us, as practitioners, let us practice the Buddha's teaching. Abandon our craving and also develop our good qualities, and let us try to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very life. Thank you. I think we are getting ready for the Buddha Puja. So if the Dayakas are ready, they can come.
Somebody wrote this.
We are going to offer the Buddha Puja. Today, our Esala Poyedi Dana has been sponsored by past people of Devi Balika Vidyalaya, very reputed school in Colombo. It's a great school, one of the very famous, very reputed college in Colombo. They are very fortunate being studied in Devi Balika Vidyalaya. They are grateful to their Balika Vidyalaya, giving good guidelines for their life. And pupil of Devi Balika Vidyalaya. They are doing very well, professional lives they have, and very grateful. They want to show their gratitude to the Devi Balika Vidyalaya. Especially Vimla Silva, the first principal, wasn't she?
Yes,
She was a very reputed scholar. Later she became the chancellor of Jawaharlal University, and Vimla Silva is in Sri Lanka women. She was very highly educated and a great scholar, and she was the principal of Devi Balika Vidyalaya. Also Anuma Pozubiti, one of the principals. Teacher. Induli Piyananda, she passed away on 17th July.
Student, yeah.
Student. So these departed people, they remember also they want to give blessings to their Vidyalaya, wishing progress, and also living teachers and their principal. They want to confer blessings upon them, and also they want to get blessings. This Past Goodwill Association want to get blessings for the progress of their programs, activities. They have annual program, blessings of the puja. One of the programs is offering dana to the vihara, those who have observed precepts, and also monks. Annually they sponsor for this ceremony. We appreciate very much. It's a good support for our program, for the success of the program. And we wish all the success of their endeavors, their activities, and also blessings to their Vidyalaya, their college, and departed great principals, including Vimla Silva. May they receive our prayers and blessings. May they attain Nirvana. Siddhanatana, Vitamada Swadbalika Vidyalaya, Devi Balika Vidyalaya, Adisishavan Meina Uvaya, Vitamada Vachina Pravajamata, Egolangi Jivite, Kodanga Ganda, Udopakana, Devi Balika Vidyalaya, Asivada, Vimla, Kutura, Lakrimala, Visidinam, Sudan, Villa, Kutujavi. In Namaskara Kyanuni, Sisamada Vichai, Namaskara, Pansika Dipan, Anita Pansika Namaskara Kyan.
Those who have observed 8 precepts, please do not observe 5 precepts. Everyone else, please. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Pāṇāṭipāṭā veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyāmi. Adinādāna David Balika College here in UK. May the merits, may the abundance of punya merit that you accrue today's offerings be upon the late Madam Vimala Viserva and Mrs. Madam Anoma Protopidi and Internet Payland, who passed away on July 17th this month, as well as all the founding staff, teaching staff and non-academic staff and all past late pupils of David Balika Vidyalaya, and also anyone who has passed in your name here today. And by sharing the merits, may they continue their journey in samsara happily and safely until they are nirvana one day. And on the transcendent to local level, may the abundance of punya that you accrue today's offerings, great offering to Buddha and Sangha, help you achieve your ultimate goal of salvation of nirvana one day. With those worldly and transcendental goals in your heart, shall we now decide together to make or dedicate the first portion of lunch preparation to the Buddha. Iti piso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vichārana sampanno sugato lokavido anuttaro purisa brahma sarati vattha deva manussānam buddho bhagavati vannaganda Sari accept observance in the main hall. Please move to the main hall, please. Thank you.
In the last